Okay, so good evening from the studios of Radio FM88 in Australia. Obviously, we're broadcasting from the Brisbane studio. And Thursday nights, 7 years in a row, we've had Dreaming the New Dream. Our co-host is none other than Priti Pauline. She's based in the UK. And the guest tonight, we've had, well, I'm going to say today too, because it's in the morning over there in the UK. So our guest has been on before. It's riveting information to do with biodynamic farming. Anyone who's got a green thumb, green hands, and knows how to work with the soil would be really interested to listen to the show. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Priti. There you go.
So good morning, Jeff. Thank you very much again for simulcasting us and joining the Northern and the Southern Hemispheres. And good morning, Hans. How are you today?
Good morning, everybody. How are you? I'm great and really excited being here again and sharing with you all.
Man, it's really good to have you back. And we've been talking between the two of us about some things that we could discuss this morning or this evening. And as we're in the season of equinoxes, we've got the spring equinox here in the Northern Hemisphere and the autumn equinox in the Southern Hemisphere. And we had a great, very stimulating conversation about the inner light and the outer light and the differences between the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. And what I'd like to say is, Hans, take it away. This is such good stuff that people will really enjoy, I imagine. Go for it.
All right. Yeah, we had some wonderful conversations around the equinox, actually, because now we're broadcasting. We're just almost a week away from equal day, equal night experience, which this year equilux, which precedes equinox, was on the 17th of March here, meaning in the Northern Hemisphere. And maybe we will be showing you some slides to explain also the technicalities, how this actually works, why we have this difference between here in the Northern Hemisphere. We had suddenly 4 minutes more on the 18th of March than on the 17th of outer light. And the interesting thing is, in Australia or in the Southern Hemisphere, generally speaking, you had 4 minutes, to be exact, 3 minutes and 58 seconds less light. And the funny thing is, just like with the solstices, where we reach the height of summer in Australia in December, in the Northern Hemisphere in June, the light stays the same for about 9 days in the winter solstice and the summer solstice. And there's literally a few seconds of change of light when we hit the height of summer or the depth of winter. And of course, in this equinox time, it's really this incredible dynamic growth that all the indigenous folks, both in the Southern Hemisphere, be it in Australia, New Zealand, or in Africa or in South America, always celebrated, and also in the Northern Hemisphere. And I know very little about the Southern Hemisphere, how the light changes and how the climate and everything changes, but I know from the tropics, subtropics in the Northern Hemisphere, how different it is to be in an area that's closer to the equator, because most of the southern countries are much closer to the equator than on, we are really far away, 50 degrees northern latitude. And so we've got a temperate climate. So our light experience of the outer light is very different. And the closest I can imagine for the Southern Hemisphere, when I think of South Africa, Southern Africa, or Australia, when I lived in Valencia in Spain, they said the light was very special there. And literally, we talked earlier about there's a lot of cloud here in England, and because of the atmosphere is quite different in England than, say, in Spain or in Southern Hemisphere, you've got a much more intense, bright, heating light in the southern regions than you have here, for example, in the British Isles, where the light is I would use the word almost dimmed, in comparison to what you have in the Mediterranean or in the Southern Hemisphere. So very different. And then for people who are in the equator region, we have a very thick atmosphere. It's a very high atmosphere, which becomes lower and lower towards the polar regions. You've got, of course, a very different light, which is, I would say, much more varied. And it's almost like you can see in the light the rainbow. Whereas here in England, or maybe in the Mediterranean Southern Hemisphere, it's much more intense in one way or another. And I would say, for those who are more technically minded, you have more of the blue spectrum now, which is lacking all the nuances of light.
Wow.
So that's something that later at the end, when we come maybe go a bit through experiencing what the traditional folks would experience with this change of light and the equinoxes, come to how can we actually moderate that and modulate the light from a human alchemical aspect, because I think there's a healing necessary in terms of the way the light has been developing.
Wow. So do we get all the different colors of the rainbow, the spectrum of light, in different parts of the world?
Well, different light spectrums, I would say, because of the different ether climates that you have in the world, in terms of the prevalence of one or the other elements. I'm working out of biodynamic consciousness and world conception anthroposophy very much with the elements. So when you think of, some area like England is much more dominated by the water element, and you have Australia and other places where you're much more dominated by the light element and the warmth element. So the light will manifest differently. Even sound and the air will be very different. And the question is, how can we help balance that so the whole spectrum of the rainbow can manifest again? And in the spring equinox time, I would say we have the biggest range of light available, both in the southern and northern hemisphere, where the extremes, and the indigenous people really aware of that, of light and shadow, the hot and cold, rest and action, and the physical world and the spiritual world would actually come into a very dynamic relationship. Hence, the big change in nature. When you look at plants like here in England, for example, here in southern England, over the spring equinox period, we had suddenly all the trees budding. The birds were starting nesting just previous to equinox. The people starting going out into the gardens again, being drawn out by the beautiful weather we had. Sometimes it can be very wild. Sometimes it's very warming. And we were very lucky this year was very warming. I don't know about the southern hemisphere, what happened in Australia. I heard you even had cyclones not too long ago. We had a lot of flooding here before the equinox. The whole winter was just rainy season for England. But now the spring's coming, a huge sudden change of warming and, nature waking up, outer nature waking up to the outer light. But we are going inwardly kind of asleep, It's like we're going to surrender with our inner light to that outer light growing and the daylight growing and going to sleep. Whereas in winter, it's very different. When you think of, we're contemplating, we're thinking. When you think of what happens when we think, is actually a lot of light activity through our spiritual invisible body that we have and who we are. We are actually much more contemplative and much more in a way of reflection, of assessing what was the last year like, So in the southern hemisphere, you're going into this inward movement. And of course, when you're far enough north or south, that means a lot of darkness in the outer world. And we have for example, in Scandinavia at this time, people will be cheerful because now they will have extremely long days. But when you go into the autumn equinox, you have this problem that people get so depressed that the suicide rate is actually going up tremendously because the mood changes. Yourself what it's like in England when it's cloudy. People, get more depressed. They're more low energy. and it's hard to get out of bed in the morning, for example. So how can we now look at balancing when the outer light is not shining to let the inner light shine, actually, because we have a sun inside. We are a star also.
Okay. So in Australia now, people will be starting naturally to want to contemplate a little bit more about what's going on. And okay, we're at the equinox and we're not at the solstice yet. So for the next 3 months or so, there'll be this inner reflection of how things have been going on. What did I do? How can I do it better? These sort of evaluative way of looking at the world. Is that correct?
I would say you're going the right direction there, because when I'm thinking here of the spring equinox right now, we're all in the action mode.
Yeah.
If we have a garden, for example, or we're growers, it's all happening out there. The weeds are starting growing, call them the weeds or the wild plants, weeds being plants that are competing with our cultivars, and everything's sprouting. Everything, the soil is warming up, lights are getting longer, seeds want to germinate, so we're putting the seeds in for growing our crops. So it's all about action, okay? In terms of outer transformation, I would say, of the nature around, both in terms of when we think traditionally, the craftspeople would now had harvested all the wood, and they start crafting the wood and making wheels and making barrels and making furniture and making utensils. Now they got all the hard the hardwood to actually create that in the summer through their craft. The gardeners and the farmers would be out in the garden and becoming active. Now in the autumn, traditionally what happened was when the light waned, and well, you could ask the question, why do universities and schools start their study year in the autumn, not in spring? Because spring is orientated to the outside world, and autumn is orientated towards the inside world of study and reflection and innovation and projecting and looking at creative ideas. So traditionally here in Europe, and I don't know if anybody in Australia, New Zealand knows about this festival, we have something called the Michaelmas Festival, and that's the 29th. Yeah, it's 29th of September, so it's following up to the equinox, when the days get very rapidly shorter and you have this tremendous sense of losing the light that's outside. You suddenly start going in and remembering you have done, say, farming for the master farmer or gardener or whatever for the year, and you go, I'm a little bit tired of having worked for this fellow for the whole year. I'm going to look for a new place to start working. So people are starting looking for new startups, for new ways of starting their life all over and learning in new places, or discovering new inventions, or if they study on the intellectual level. But in the practical world, it was always the time when the apprentices and the journeymen in Europe of the guilds, which were the fellowship of all the craftsmen, of the carpenters or the craftsmen of the wheelwrights or the blacksmiths, they would go from one master to another and look for a new master to have a new experience and go to another country. So they would then journey. Whereas in spring, you're in the place to anchor and root yourself in the work, in transforming the space locally. In autumn, you as it were go inward, but you also spread out and go explore the world in a greater sense, more globally, with global consciousness. Like they used to say, think globally and act locally, but you have to really start also in a spiritual sense, really embrace the whole universe, the whole world in your inner life, in your inner light, in the autumn, winter. And once you've done that, you can apply it in spring very practically, having learned new things and being exposed to a new space. And then you apply it in the outer world, which, it's happening still a lot in the world of the craftspeople. Okay.
And then also in autumn, you reap the harvest, you reap what you've sown.
Exactly.
So
very, very right. Yeah. You actually also you reap, and then of course the whole other aspect is you can't eat it all at once, because you look at August, September equinox in the autumn, all the the variety of crops that come in, and also in October, which you can not eat all at once because it's your root crops and it's your fruiting crops. So what are you going to do with all that surplus? Well, obviously we have harvest celebrations that eat a lot there in the autumn, but we also have the possibility, and you see that still in Italy and in Spain, the older women, sitting outside with a big cauldron and starting stripping down the tomatoes of the skin and the seed and making pasta, tomato sauce pasta, and preserving, conserving, fermenting, storing in cold stores and root cellars and clamps, in the colder climates. So it's very much also, not just remembering your year inside in your inner light, but it's you gathered the light during the summer half year in your vegetables that you store through the winter. The vegetables and also your firewood is actually sunlight.
Yeah.
Transformed sunlight stored in physical matter. Because light,
so you can eat the light.
Light disappears at night. Every night light disappears and appears in day. But if you have it stored in your food and in your wood, you can, just remember these lovely fires that you have in the winter, or fire around the campfire. And you have this beautiful far near infrared red light, and how healing that is. That's sunlight. It's outer light become inner light in the matter, a physical matter of the substance that has been transformed from light into matter. And then you release it again when you set it alight in the wood, or you eat that love, particularly the root crops and the fruit crops are full of light, more than the leaves that you eat in the spring and summer. That light is released in your gnashes when you start masticating between your, enamel teeth. They're piezoelectric. They're starting energizing the light to the brain, informing the brain and the thoughts and the neurons to then go through the fascia and the connective tissue and the cellular silica connectors to communicate with the whole body. So what was cosmic light in the summer, sun having received all the light from the whole universe and projected it down to earth, received by the wood and by the vegetables and by the herbs and flowers and everything we have in the house, it's released through us eating it and informing us and giving us the new ideas, particularly in the winter.
Wow.
Crops and the fruit crops.
Yeah, that's quite amazing. I would never have thought of it being piezoelectric. Mostly piezoelectric, the only time I think about that is when we ignite the gas in the gas stove and push the ignition. And now you've just given a whole new dimension to the word piezoelectric, because that's sparking the new ideas and sparking the new life, and amazing.
And we come back to that word at the end when I show how we can actually use that quality also to heal the earth and protect it from the radiation that's coming, both artificially projected now by the, the different satellites and what have you, and also the radiation that comes in from the cosmos that's harmful to the earth. But, just think now also, we talked about the fruit and the root crops. It's the seeds that have been concentrated in the autumn in the plants. The seeds over winter. And then the idea of the plant is not just in the seed. The seed is the memory of the old, expression of that plant. Say it's a carrot. It remembers from the seed to be a carrot. But when you lay it in the ground in spring, now in the spring equinox here in the Northern Hemisphere, when you lay that seed in the ground, the memory in the soil of the light that comes in from the cosmos is actually communicated through the humus and the silica structure in the humus and the clay, which is also piezoelectric, by the way, and a conductor. Okay, that's why we have electroculture. That's a whole nother subject that maybe okay. Francesco and those people who are working here in Britain.
Indeed,
but we are enhancing that through the seed, which is silicon, carbon, and you might say the genetics of the previous plant, laying it into the mother soil. In German, we call the soil, the topsoil, the mother soil, the mother ground, we call it, like the uterus in the woman.
Yeah.
And then the fertilizing happens from the cosmic light in spring being so powerful to wake up the seed through the archetypical memory of the plant. That is, the plant information does not live in the seed alone. It lives also in the cosmic environment through the patterns, which manifests through the light and through sound, the air, are waking up the seed when we lay it in the ground in spring, and helping the seed to remember in a full way, not just to grow like it grew last year from past experience, but also what it needs to do this year with a new impulse that's coming in. A little bit like you use your memory to, base your reactions and your way of responding to the environment from your memory, but you always need new intuitions and new ideas to adapt to the changes in the outer environment or to your social environment, or wherever I might have moved house to another culture. You have to then adapt to the outer impulse that comes from the knowledge and from the wisdom. That's actually, when you look at it, it's really patterns and a sacred geometry, and it's mathematics, and it's music, and it's light. And it manifests in that way. Light becomes music, music patterns, and patterns through water then manifest in the physical world as the substance that we then harvest. That might be very highfalutin and very, very, far-fetched for some people, but that's how it really happens. And the question for a biodynamic farmer and gardener is, how can we assess this manifestation of light through these different manifestation levels of sound, water, earth, manifesting in earth, which is then the vegetable or the flower or the herb or whatever we grow, through assisting it through alchemical processes that we learn in biodynamics.
Ooh, I'm a bit blown away with all of that.
The traditional cultures did this instinctively.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And the indigenous cultures, when they celebrated the equinox, they had their circles of dance and sound and singing and bringing the light that way through the rituals that they would perform. And also the magic, they had their substances that they had in their days. Like, think of the Koki Indians, for example. I don't know if anybody heard of the Kokis and the Mamas, the priests. So they basically are saying through their ritual, which is they have a container and they stir the coca leaves continuously while they're awake. There's always some of it awake. They say through that they're turning the earth. And others through meditation and coming together are helping to create a consciousness for the world that comes through the priests and through the shamans to actually keep the light and the patterning and the movement that's happening on the earth alive. They're coming together every equinox, every solstice in different parts of the world, all the indigenous folks, to do that ritual. But now I think because of where we are in the human and the world crisis, everyone has to become a shaman, a doctor, and a healer. And that's what we're teaching in biodynamics, how to do that with the land and with the growing, and transform something that was just the privilege of the shamans and, a few priests. Everyone can become that in their own garden, in their own flower pot, and what have you, and celebrate those.
Right.
So in England, we had, you call it Easter, comes from the word estre, and I think I gave you a slide on the sacred goddess of Estre or Ostara, which is Easter, which is celebrating this change from the darkness into the light, and from working inwardly more in the outward world, and bringing about this beautiful work in the outside of nature.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
in a nutshell, what's really happening, and why the light. We are so influenced by light, both inwardly and
Yeah.
outwardly.
This
Just don't
Ostra.
realize.
So here it is, the picture of Ostra and the spring equinox.
Yeah.
And we have the different ways in which you symbolize those, with
Yeah.
the almost like the Holy Trinity coming together, and
Yeah.
the Holy Trinity with a circle coming together.
So the slide above shows you about Ostra or Ostara and the rabbits, because some people might think, well, why do we celebrate Easter with the rabbits laying eggs? And there's a whole mythology about Ostra Ostara, that she saved a rabbit who was ailing, and a bird that was ailing, and the bird turned into a rabbit. And because it's still remembered to lay eggs now, in the mythology of the Celts, the rabbits are bringing the eggs because it was a transformed bird, and because the rabbit had so much gratitude for being saved by Ostara, he gifted her with laying eggs, and not just laying eggs, but even coloring them. The coloring of the eggs on the Easter that you put on the willow or things in the Northern Hemisphere. That's very much, memory of that kind of mythology of what happened with that transition. And then, as you
say, there's not too many people that know about that. At Easter time, it's full of Easter eggs in the shop, but where do they come from? Why are we? Yeah, it's a good question.
And if you just go back to if you just go back to the Ostra and the spring equinox and the Triskera, just Ketra. You said, it's very interesting. The symbolism there is really about the Trinity, and it's about life, death, and rebirth, which we celebrate in spring, right? So we went through this inner life in winter, and then we're dying to ourselves and what we know from the past to live a new life in spring. And the seeds have to die to bring forth the new life to the plants that are born out of the seed. The seed doesn't die. If our old concepts that we created in winter don't die to the reality of spring, what's in front of us, we become obsessed, dogmatic perfectionists and stuck in our heads, instead of getting into the impulse of action and trusting that we're led by nature and by the intuition that we have into the transformation and rebirth. And then you have, you see, and then you have the whole aspect of the this triquetra, also symbolizing Trinity, body, soul, and spirit. So, in nutrition nowadays, we know that the gut informs the heart and the brain. And if the brain, the thinking, is not aligned with the heart and has a coherence, we are going against ourselves. We need to have that heart head coherence, which they teach in the Heart Math Institute, for example. And then you have the whole aspect of the law. Where does the law come from? It's about the land, air, and water. So every law, natural law, is actually based in the elements. And I would say there has to be another one, which is warmth element, which is missing in the law in the way it's been seen as a trinity. But, for sake of Trinity, you have also the woman and the path of the human being through life. You go through life in 3 stages. You are the innocent youngster or maiden. You're the mother who takes responsibility for the new children. And then you're the crone when you're in your old age. Or as a man, you're the innocent, young man. And then you're the creator, and you're also the wisdom holder with the crones together at old age. So this symbol has many meanings, really, that could be, laid onto it. And the traditions had really that kind of consciousness, which we're now rediscovering in a new way. So spring really holds that kind of rebirth potential. And then,
I just wanted
to go on.
I just wanted to let you know that recently, of course, in Sussex, I was out collecting lots of wild garlic that has just sprung up. It's a beautiful herb, and that certainly awakened a lot within the taste of the foods. That put a little bit of wild garlic on it. It's fabulous, and that's a brilliant to me, awakening, and
it's
very
awakening,
tasty.
And a tasty awakening, as you say. And at the same time, also, it's an interesting time of year because you know how in England they call it the hungry gap.
I
So
didn't
the
know
hungry
about
gap was
this.
the time when there was barely any food left, and because there was barely anything left. Well, let's go back a little bit. In preparation for Equinox and Easter, we heard all about Lent.
Yes.
40 days, which, you know, it celebrates Christ being in the desert and being tempted and all those things before he entered into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, which is happening this next Sunday. So those 40 days are a time that's marked in England by Pancake Day.
Yes.
Before Ash Wednesday, right? So the traditions used to eat up all the eggs because they couldn't store them into the warmer time of the year. You know, they didn't survive. They had them outside when it was cold winters, and they were preserved because chickens don't lay eggs in winter. So they kept them, stored them, and ate them all on Pancake Day. Well, in other cultures, it's called Carnival. And it's called Carnival because they ate up the last bit of meat that they had stored. It got too warm to store it because, you know, even if they salted it and preserved it, they couldn't keep it. So they ate it all up in a celebration, and it became the fasting because there was no food left. They had to fast. And assisted by foraging wild herbs that started coming up, like the wild sorrel, the stinging nettles, the your wild garlic, other herbs that are very bitter, and started cleansing the body and detoxing the body before Easter. And then Easter Sunday was another feast day again, because it was the first time, like you might have, you know, the lambs were born and you slaughter the first lamb, particularly in the warmer climates a bit further south. And so the sacrificial lamb is not just an image for Christ, but it was a practical daily activity at that time of year to sacrifice your lambs, to feast the rebirth of spring and the light being back and everything growing. So symbolism is based in practical ways in the Northern Hemisphere. At least I can only relate it to that right now. But you'll find in your own traditions that everything is related always to very practical daily activities that were traditionally practiced.
Jeff, can we go back to the slide where it has the spring and the autumn equinox? Back again, down again.
The transformation of in and out.
This one. This one.
Yeah.
Can you go through this one? The winter. So we more or less covered that, but there's all the different names in the Celtic quarter year, and
I see. You mean the
Southern Hemisphere and the Northern Hemisphere, just to bring them together.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Okay. So in the traditions, we had basically in the Northern Hemisphere, I mean, you know, the symbolism here is Celtic, and it shows on the left-hand side the Southern Hemisphere in terms of the different times of year. That it's opposite to ours on the right, which is Northern Hemisphere. So on the left, you have the spring equinox in September, which is very counterintuitive if I say it here from the Northern Hemisphere, but that's how it is for Jeff down in Australia. And then Beltane following up in November, etc., which is our most fertile time of year is Beltane. You know, it's a fertility festival. And then the summer, sorry, we're going the other way. August.
We're going clockwise or
I'm going the wrong way.
anti-clockwise?
I'm going the wrong way. Spring equinox. Then we have Imbolc.
Imbolc.
Hold it. Why is there August, autumn equinox, April? I'm getting so confused with this because it's back to front. Honestly. So October. So we're going Beltane November.
winter.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the fertility festival in the Southern Hemisphere is obviously in November, which is the biggest growth, the fastest expansion, the most balance in the elements. And then you have the winter. Where's the winter solstice?
Winter solstice.
That should be summer.
23rd of December, yeah.
It should be summer solstice there. That's a
Is that because we've got them? Is that because we've got Northern and Southern Hemisphere?
No, that slide is wrong with winter solstice there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got them back to front.
I didn't double check it. It should actually be December. Should be summer solstice. They got it wrong here. When I applied, I didn't double check it. So that's why I got confused actually. So December, January,
you confused yourself. Never mind.
In the Southern Hemisphere, and then you got Impulse. It's back to front. I'm so sorry for confusing you there now. I need to create my own. I haven't found one that's actually, the right way around. It looks like for the Southern Hemisphere. So really sorry about this. Not an easy one to actually explain it on this because the spring equinox is correct, and
yes, on the left-hand side.
On the left-hand side, and the autumn equinox, but everything else is actually back to front. I'm sorry.
Okay, not to worry.
But if we go around the year on the
the right-hand side,
hemisphere, on the right-hand side, you see how you got. Let me just see quickly here. So Ostera, where we're now, Easter, spring equinox, Beltane coming into May here in the Northern Hemisphere, which is the fertility festival. And, I used to do Morris dancing. We start in 1st of May, and then we finish on the 21st of June, which is solstice, which is Ither, here on this little diagram. And that's when you stop doing the fertility dancing, because the growth of the plants has taken place, and they got enough growth and light accumulated to then start ripening in the summer warmth that comes then with Lugnasa, first harvest festival in beginning of August. And then you have Mahon in the September, which is autumn equinox. And that is the harvest festival. And then you've got Samhain, which is the transition into the darkest time of year in terms of the soul, this journey of the soul, and where the beginning of Carnival is happening in Northern Hemisphere, where you celebrate actually 11/11, so 11th of that's the November month. At 11/11, they start Carnival and bringing all the demons out, because the atmosphere is the thinnest and it's really a dark time of year. A lot of people die. The leaves are falling to the ground, and then you go into midwinter, when traditionally here in the Celtic tradition, people would be initiated in the different underground caves, and the sun would wake them up from a temporary death of 3 days held by the priests and being initiated into being the new priests and priestesses. So Christmas Day used to be the day when the new self, the new higher spiritual awakening would happen in the priests and priestesses in the Celtic tradition. And then Imbolc, of course, 1st of February, when you burn all your candles, and the light is so, bright again, and the days are getting longer, you can start working outside without artificial light, basically. So that's the Celtic year in terms of the quarter year and the tradition festivals, and also the Christian festivals.
So is there a similarity with the 3 days of death, with the 3 days of the dead in autumn time? Certainly in Mexico, they have the 3 days of the dead.
Yeah, it's always traditionally 3 days that they would celebrate. And think of, the crucifixion is also celebrated 3 days. So you have got the
Good Friday.
Then you got, so that's Good Friday. The Saturday, according to the Christian tradition, Christ would go into the underworld and redeem all the demons for the whole of humanity, or call it, redeem all the sins, of humanity, being reborn or resurrected, discovered by Mary Magdalene, funnily enough, as the gardener, which is very significant to me, that he was actually seen as the gardener rather than Christ, Christ as the gardener. because I think in gardening we actually have a quality where we resurrect nature in a very conscious way, in a modern way. And then you have the same with summer solstice and St. John's festival, 3 days. So St. John's festival, 3 days of the summer solstice. And Michaelmas is the only difference, because there you've got the autumn equinox, and you got actually 8 days, like a week, between the actual Christian festival and the equinox. So there's something which is different.
Yeah, so there's a huge amount of mythology, Celtic traditions, lots and lots and lots of traditions that are out there that are ordinarily being interplayed with modern life that we don't even know about.
That's right. And I love studying all this.
I've not been.
Yeah, I love studying all this and bringing it together. Carry on.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have pulled together the 3 days of the dead to do with the initiation and the shaman. So we're trying to keep things alive, but don't quite know what we're keeping alive from my ignorant perspective.
And that's why in the Wholistic Living University, we started a new way of working with the festivals and the changes that are happening at different times of years that we are creating with the people who are together. Say at this time now around Easter, we're going to all come together in a group of, say, 12, 15 people, and we're going to create a new festival as we experience it now, here and now, being aware of the traditions, but not celebrating just traditions, but creating new festivals that are present with our consciousness as we're here now, as a group of people who come from different cultures. Like we've got people from the Muslim culture, we got people from Hinduism, we got people from Christianity, we got people that are more versed in the Celtic tradition, and we bring that together with our modern consciousness and create new festivals, a new celebration of the changing rhythms, the changes in our relationship that we have with the land, with the way the nature changes at the time, and celebrate that in a creative way, with games, with poetry, with movement, with dance, with all sorts of different types of celebrations, because that's something we really want to offer as the arc of the season through the university that we're creating.
Okay, and in conjunction with dreaming the new dream, I can see you've got here, grow your own health. So if we're dreaming of betterment and growing our own health, where would we start there?
I think, as I said, it starts all with reconnecting with the outer and inner nature in terms of seeing, we talked about the inner and outer light, but there's more than the light. It's, what's living outside in nature, changing constantly and being in touch with it and immersing ourselves on a daily basis is really of the essence. Like say, I have one slide where I talk about the circadian rhythm, What a difference would it make to my life, instead of getting on my mobile phone in the morning, to go out barefoot on the lawn, on the dew in the morning, or the snow in winter, or the ice in winter, barefoot, and experience and ground myself in nature, and really allow nature in, because we are part of nature. We're sharing the plant, the animal, and the mineral kingdom with the outer nature. It's in us. But if we don't expose our physical and our life and our soul body to the outer nature, we more and more atrophy those parts of ourselves. We just live more and more just in our head, in our concepts, rather than in real experiences. So going out in the morning, gazing the sun when it's most nourishing with the far infrared, near infrared light in the morning, the awakening light, to reset our circadian rhythm. Okay? If we do that, then we're actually resetting our biological clock, our internal clock. And that way, we also do that again in the evening when the sun goes down, and stay off the screens in the evening, of the blue screens particularly, or put at least red light blockers on. We have reset our circadian rhythm. Insomnia, depression and all those mental illnesses that we're talking about nowadays could actually be alleviated just by doing that.
Wow.
Following that
Now
rhythm.
that's pure medicine.
It's pure medicine, and it's not just pure medicine in terms of the light that we experience consciously, because you have to do this consciously as a conscious activity. But the dew, for example, if you know that the dew has the highest quantity of nutrition in it for plants and us, and if you go barefoot, the soles are the most absorbing, the fastest absorbing of everything that comes in contact with our soles. So being with the dew, earthing, and then in the evening and gazing to the sun, taking the sunlight in, you're actually reconnecting, like the seed. When we lay the seed in the ground in spring, you're reconnecting our past with a future of the sun that's coming that day. You're going to be set up to be creative, innovative, and cheerful and joyful, because, I mean, who doesn't feel that amazing awakening with the sun in the morning and that light hitting you? It's like the birds are starting singing. Why are they singing so chirpily, you know? And you listen to the bird song, you know? It's all a reset for our mindset, which is being obliterated with bad news and all the other stuff that we are occupying ourselves with. And then on top of it, if you are in the garden, I have a few suggestions how we can actually moderate, you know, being proactive, healing the earth and ourselves by doing alchemical processes with the soil and the land and the plants when we do our biodynamic preparation work.
Okay. So I'm going to suggest to our audience and the people, if you want to dream a new dream, that a challenge could be for the next 30 days, on 60 occasions, 30 in the morning and 30 in the evening, just go and walk barefoot and absorb what's going on, whether it's wind, rain, sun, whatever the weather, walk in nature, just walk on the grass. And I wonder what that would.
It's one step. It's only one step to
one step at a time.
One step, and the result's going to be magnificent.
I mean, that could be a marvelous way to collectively just be the antidote to all sorts of mental illness.
And as an offspring also, as you get into that state of peace and presence and connection, you're going to anchor the consciousness that's just floating around and rife and, you know, getting even violent and emotional and all these things that are happening between conflicts between people. It would be anchored in that moment as I would call it even a meditation of peace. And it's what you can do for yourself, you do for the world.
Yeah. I mean, once upon a time, I was part of an organization called the Bromley Advocacy Project, which was all about giving a voice to people with mental health difficulties. So this is not giving a voice. This is giving something very practical and giving a reconnection to dissolve the mental health difficulties. And it's a simple act of walking in the grass and looking up, experiencing the light, and morning and evening, twice a day, go out and get your dosage. I'm just imagining One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Nurse Ratchet. Go on off out there.
Let's be crazy, yeah.
Walk
crazy and happy.
In the rain
yeah, dance in the rain too. It's an amazing.
I'd rather do that.
Yeah, amazing practice. And just think, like you said, immerse yourself in the light experience, the grounding experience, but also the sound. Because when you have rain, when you have wind, and the changing leaves, you know, in winter you have no leaves, then you have the spring leaves, then you have the summer leaves, then you have the autumn dried up leaves. The sounds are changing. You're really reconnecting to every
really pay attention.
The bird song changes. What do you smell in the air? What do you know, and then, you know, maybe taste some things, you know, we're not so much like animals, like dogs. They follow their scent. The olfactic sense is the closest to spiritual perception. So smelling into the environment, sensing the aromas that are changing. And sometimes you walk through a street and you get this amazing scent, and you go, where did that come from? And it wasn't artificial perfume by a man or woman passing by with deodorant. No, it was a bush that was flowering, and the air just gave you that little waft of air that, infused with the light of making the flowers flower. And when it's a hot, light-filled day, you have with a bit of moisture in the air, and you get this waft of beautiful scent that hits you, and you go, where did that come from? That was magic. Where is it? And you can't see it. It's maybe behind a fence or behind the wall or something. It's that kind of waking. When you do the morning and evening exercise, you would waken up to those kind of experience in your daily life, wherever you are.
Wow. So growing your own health is not just about growing plants and being with the rhythms. We've now got a whole new dimension of how we can grow our own health simply by going out in the morning and in the evening.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just amazing.
And then Jeff is just
pure
showing
alchemy to me.
Yeah. And then Jeff is just showing the slide of the calendar that we produced, which assists people to have every month a different kind of focus in terms of the changing quality of the light of the sun and the quality of the warmth and, the different colors that are evolving throughout the year. It's sort of portrayed by different foci and different meditative thoughts that are put out in the calendar for inner work. And then every day people are led into the work in the garden, what they could actually do in their home garden or with their flower pots or their plants, if they've just got a terrace. We don't need to have a garden to practice growing. Even if you just have one plant, if you have one plant and focus on that one plant and, follow the rhythms of the moon, the rhythms of the sun going through the zodiac and the moon going through the zodiac and rising and descending throughout the month or throughout the year, that's all being portrayed in the calendar, assisting people to live a more rhythmic, light-filled and rhythm-filled life, which then brings again peace and the quality of contemplation and restfulness and rejuvenation into their life.
So can people get this themselves?
Yeah, they can download it
your
from
own
the
calendar.
Jeff's just showing the website. They can download it from this website, going to calendar 26 as an extension, and it's only a tenner. Or if you belong to any environmental or other organization, we'll give you a freebie code, because if you're already a member of an environmental, agricultural, or social or other organization working with health and well-being, you can get the calendar for free. You just contact us. Yeah.
And tell me a little bit more about what's actually in the calendar. I know you've said that is it a day by day, month by month? Look, I have one ready for me behind.
Someone printed out the calendar. It's literally the meditations that are in the beginning of the page, and
it was July,
and the different virtues you can practice inwardly and outwardly in your life with other people. And then it's here we have July, for example. We have then the daily activities are just listed in this form here, where you can see what to do in the garden specifically every day. If it's not in here, we have a glossary in the back where it explains the details of what you do with the different vegetables.
So we're just coming into April. So what have we got lined up for April?
All right, let's have a quick look. I mean, April, we're now, the moon is now, it was just half full yesterday. If you look up in the sky, wherever you are, even in Australia, you see Jupiter in the constellation of the twins, and the moon is half full and going towards full moon. And for example, now it will start descending. So in Biodynamics, the moon descends, we start transplanting. So it's going in a day and a half, it's going to go into the constellation of the Cancer crabs, which is all about leaf crops. So we're going to transplant and prick out our leaf crops here in our greenhouse that we have and grow them for another 4 weeks. And then when the moon is again in that constellation, we transplant it in the garden. Then the moon will go into the constellation of the Lion. And that's a very prominent constellation. If you want to make your wheat seeds germinate in your garden, you hoe your garden when the moon is in that constellation. All the wheat seeds start germinating. And then in 10 days, you come back when the moon is in the constellation of Capricorn or the goatfish, and you hoe again, and it will prevent any seeds left from germinating. So you can actually do weeding without weeding because you're using the constellations and the moon. So all this is in the calendar. And then when the moon is in the constellation of the Lion, it's a warmth constellation, meaning it enhances the growth of fruit crops. So we're going to transplant and prick out our fruiting vegetables like the tomatoes and the cucumbers and courgettes and what have you. And then when they're ready in 4 or 5 weeks, when frost danger is over, we plant them outside when the moon is again in the constellation of the Lion or the Archer, which is also warmth constellation. So all this is day by day in the calendar and guiding you for beginner gardeners or beginner biodynamic gardeners. And online we have an advanced course that's a whole year course where we go into greater detail, but we also explain what's in the Maria Thune calendar, because that's much more for the advanced learners, where all you get is what kind of days have you got, and then you have to know already which plants to plant and whatnot. So this is your introductory guide for beginners, and this is your advanced learners Maria Thune calendar, which is published by the Biodynamic associations all around the world.
Wow.
And, you follow those rhythms, you bring rhythm into your life by working in a rhythmic way. I bet you will stop fretting, you will stop being anxious, you will stop being depressed, you will increase your mental health. I mean, doctors prescribe during lockdown people to go and garden or go for walks, like we just talked about earlier, go out in the morning and evening, because they realized that was the best way to keep people mentally healthy and well, is connecting with nature outside. And if you do that rhythmically.
And certainly in England, we had exercise, which was daily exercise, which was again prescribed by the government during the lockdown.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, because we're simulcasting, is it fair to say that what's happening in your calendar in April for the Northern Hemisphere, if we looked at what's happening in October in the calendar, is that what down under?
Yep.
What we should be doing in the Southern Hemisphere?
I gotta say this with the premise. I gotta say it with the premise that this calendar is written specifically for temperate climate, so across the Northern Hemisphere. So in terms of the timing, also the times when people do things, they have to then adjust the time zone. Say in the States on the East Coast, they have to add 5 hours, because we're giving even the specific times when things change during the day, when you can work in the garden or not work in the garden, because they're detrimental influences or beneficial influences. For the Southern Hemisphere, yes, you have to turn it back to front, like we saw in the diagram about the different festivals. And obviously April corresponds to October. In the next year, I'm considering possibly to creating 2 calendars, one for the Southern and one for the Northern Hemisphere, because the year the growing year starts at different times, the opposite side. So in the Southern Hemisphere, going into the winter, obviously growing is going to start happening, what's happening now, in half a year. So it needs to be totally catered for on that level. But if anybody gets the calendar and they look at October now and November and December, they got a head start for what to do to prepare the garden with green manuring and fertility building and all the other things like fruit tree planting and all things that happen in the autumn in the Southern Hemisphere. They could start with that now.
Wow. Okay, so we've now got symmetry between the northern and the southern hemisphere
So it
by
is.
simply converting April into October, May into November, and June into December. And what have we got? July into January, and we're away. We're flying.
Yeah, and the only thing that is not written in this calendar is the new year for the Southern Hemisphere, because you're ahead of the game in a sense, you're even ahead in time. But so we would have to create a calendar in July for the Southern Hemisphere, for starting with January or August. July, January in the Southern Hemisphere. We would have to publish that calendar in our spring, summer, to get the Australian folks ready, and the South Africans and the Argentinians and so on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. I'm going to bring it back to the equinoxes now, because when we had a conversation last week, you were letting me know that the actual precise equal day and night was the 17th of March, not the 21st of March that we all think of. Now, is that the same in the southern hemisphere? Here we are, the change of seasons.
Yeah.
So what was it that has brought the equinox earlier? Or is it a dynamic equinox?
Well, one thing is that the definition of equinox in the astronomical world and in the world of publication is the crossing of the ecliptic of the sun through the ecliptic of, there's like a slight distortion to the ecliptic of the Earth. And so the equinox officially astronomically was on the 20th this year. But when you think of equal day, equal night, they call that equilux for some reason. That was on the 17th.
Lux, now, as in being the measurement of light.
Yeah, in terms of the Earth's axis, you can see here, which is 23.5 degrees inclined. You can see that because of that inclination, the autumn or the spring is different, because as the Earth is inclined going around the sun for a certain period, say, for example, for us right now, we're inclined away from the sun on the left side. Let me just double check quickly, say this the right way. Let me just double check on this. So winter in the Northern Hemisphere, we are inclined away on the left. So the image of the Earth on the left side of this image is showing your winter in Northern Hemisphere, because the angle of the sun is like it's skimming over the surface of the Earth, and the sun rays are not coming down more perpendicular, like it says underneath. It says the summer in the Southern Hemisphere, where you have more perpendicular rays hitting the Earth, and therefore you are now in the summer, for example. But right now in the autumn and spring, which is the middle position of the Earth, so we have on the top September, so September being the autumn, on September, autumn equinox in the Northern Hemisphere. Southern Hemisphere is going to be the spring equinox, right? And we are now in March at the bottom, so we have spring in the Northern Hemisphere and autumn in the Southern Hemisphere, because of the way the Earth is inclined and exposed to the sun. So it's an astronomical factor that, which is magical, because if you think the Earth's axis would be vertical, there would be a very, very thin strip on the Earth that would only be inhabitable, which is more or less where we are in England, and where maybe the Australians are in down in Queensland. No, what's it down the island?
Tasmania.
Tasmania, yeah, that would be. And the southern island of New Zealand might be inhabitable. But because it's inclined like this, it creates this incredible variation of climates on the Earth. I mean, who designed that? Was it designed?
I don't know.
It's really magic that we have this incredible situation that it creates a perfect condition on all parts of the Earth to be inhabitable, except for the polar regions. So
Okay,
even
can we move up to the next slide,
sorry,
Jeff?
okay.
I'm just going to ask Jeff, can we move up to the next slide? So give you a chance to go through all the preparation that you go. I mean, this is amazing. The
When you
change
start
of light
studying, when you start studying astronomy and then astrology and astrosophy, which is like, advanced courses that we're developing in the university now to teach people, and history and everything else, it's incredible how everything seems so like everything was designed. There's nothing random in this universe, And now when we know that, then, for example, if you want to bring that up with the different ways we can work with the light, to moderate the light and heal the light and heal the earth, it's all based on lawfulness that is there in the way the universe is acting and creating, and we becoming co-creators.
So looking at this picture where the
this
warmth
is now the
comes
effect.
in.
Yeah, this is the effect of what's happening with the Earth going through the orbit around the sun, that you have in the middle the trade winds. And I just put this slide in because it shows the trade winds and the Hadley cell, which is around the equator, with the red arrow showing the heat, the hot part of the Earth. These cells, they change according to the season. So the Hadley cells, which are the first ones, with the yellow arrows and the orange arrows showing on the blue ocean slide on the right.
Yeah, I see them there in the center.
They're expanding right now in the Northern Hemisphere. They're going up north and bringing warm tropical, subtropical air into the temperate zone climate and the Mediterranean. So they're expanding. As the Earth is inclined towards the sun and catching more sunlight and longer days, it's going to grow, that cell. And then in the Southern Hemisphere, it's going to go shrink. So it goes the southern winter. And then it goes in autumn in the Northern Hemisphere, and in spring in the southern, down to the south and expands southward. So there's a rhythm of 1 year of breathing of these cells, these wind movements on the Earth. And the same happens with the carbon dioxide pollution. You can see that also throughout the year. It's the highest in winter when the tree leaves are down. And in May, it starts disappearing. There's no carbon pollution because the tree leaves are taking up the carbon. And then you have no carbon in the air anymore. That's, excessive because the trees are transforming into oxygen. There are all these breathing activities happening with the air and light element.
Wow. So it's all happening without our interference. It's just happening because it is.
Because of the way the Earth rotates and the way the Earth is inclined in relationship to the sun.
So all this 2030 agenda of zero carbon, I mean, wow, that's a bombshell, isn't it?
Well, it's debunked by major scientists anyway already. Even in the regenerative agricultural community and everywhere I go to now, the people who were really on board with this are realizing that's, what the biggest healing activity needs to be right now that we're coming to is not about carbon, it's about water.
Tell me.
Because the water cycle is disrupted. The water consciousness has been disrupted by our own emotional and I would say irresponsible way of thinking, acting, and feeling. And water is consciousness. Water is self-healing, but we need to give it and enhance the environment so it can actually heal even faster. Because when you look at it, if you look at the clouds, and these Hadley cells in terms of the wind directions and everything else, the water moderates and modulates the light and air and also the earth and the warmth. Now, when you think of temperate climate, what's missing in the cities is water because it's all evaporated. There's no trees left. and carbon is expelled by combustion engine and heating and stuff. And what you have is superheating in the cities. There's global warming in the cities, but not in the countryside. The countryside is cooled by the evaporation of the leaves from the trees and the plants and the grass, and is cooled down. If we introduce more green in the cities, we won't have global warming. Global warming only exists in the cities.
Well, now there's a challenge.
And so the carbon problem is as well. It's where carbon's concentrated in the cities without trees being able to transform it into oxygen. You've got a carbon pollution problem. But not in the countryside. Richard Saint-Barth Baker, I don't know if anybody knows about Richard Saint-Barth Baker, the man of the trees. He saved the redwoods in Northern California when Reagan was going to cut them all down for the paper industry. And he said, we'll leave one for the museum, the one with the arch you can walk through and drive through. We leave that one so people know what a redwood looks like. He saved all those redwoods. He planted millions of trees in Kenya. And now there's also women in Men of the Trees organization. It was very like a gentleman kind of thing in the 40s, 50s. And I met him in the 1980s coming to Emerson College. And he even visited Vietnam and had the children were replanting all the napalm destroyed landscapes with trees and stuff. He had amazing experience. And he came and he said, you know what? There's one problem in the cities. Oxygen levels in the cities are down to 17 or 15%, even in the summer, because of all the combustion and all the lack of nature around producing oxygen. Now, usually it's 21%, okay? That means the people won't be able to think clearly anymore. They will fall asleep, and the immune system and everything else will go down. He predicted that in the 80s.
Wow. And now we're seeing it.
And we're seeing the consequences. And Zach Bush, if you listen to Zach Bush, I really highly recommend to interview him and to have a conversation. He talks about the light, the fact that light is not there anymore in the food. It's not there in the body communicating anymore. And the cities are literally places where the pollution is so high in winter that people will, with no doubt, have lowered immune system and more contagious or, infectious diseases, I should say, rather than contagious. Contagious energetically, but not physically. It's prone. So, the salvation is really recreating integrated places in the landscape where people can live in the land without leaving a footprint under the earth. I'm dreaming up villages that will be under the earth, and the gardens will be on top of our houses with no footprint, no commuting anymore. We'll be all locally networked and regionally networked, because it's the only way forward, really to live a healthy and rhythmic and non-polluting life. Because and water management, really honoring water, which we're doing here. I'm on the watershed right now. Where I'm sitting here, I'm on the watershed between the Ouse and the Medway River, and they have both been granted the right to be represented, to not be polluted anymore. So we're in a very prominent place here in Sussex, where we're working with water consciousness, bringing farmers together to get rid of the boundaries and start doing water management together with the water catchment areas and water conservation, so the water doesn't run off anymore, because we had a water crisis here. 2 weeks, no water. And it was raining like hell.
Yeah.
So we have to become responsible for the water cycles, and then the light will inform the water with the patterns, and the sound will inform the water with the patterns to recreate life on the earth.
Okay. So I may have misinterpreted this, but would roof gardens be one of the ways in which we could start to reintroduce more trees into the city areas?
Yeah, they're doing it all over the States already. And, in Cuba, when the crisis hit in 1989, they put all the rooftops that were flat, particularly high-rise blocks, into, green. in Germany, Austria, forget the name of the amazing architect. There were several architects actually who created like, high-rise blocks that were greened on the outside because they had planters all along the building. So the building became like a big tree that would evaporate water and cool it down, instead of having the concrete, drink up the heat in the day and then pollute the city with heat and create a heat belt and climate. It creates climate chaos. The cities, airports, motorways create climate chaos because they're creating the electric charge in the air and also the pollution to create high heat belts that create very torrential rain and keep rain away from other areas. They're creating those extremes in climate, in my opinion, from my research.
Okay, so would you imagine the way forward would be to bring some...
Well, as I said, the way forward is really helping people to relocate into the countryside, finding ways with the planning permission restrictions, particularly in England being the most strict, to going underground, where you don't need planning permission, to build temporary buildings like round houses and things that are temporary structures, and recreating farming communities and communities that are living on the land, off the land, locally, regionally, networked, nationally and internationally.
Wow.
And that's what we're building in terms of training and education with the Wholistic Living University.
And if anyone's interested, how do they get hold of their applications? What are the courses? What is it you're doing with the Holistic Living University? If people want to get engaged with that, tell us a bit more.
So we have introductory monthly online events. We have practical events monthly, both for people who want to start their own personal garden or community gardens. And we got also a year full course if people want to dive deeper, also learning more about well-being and health, in terms of not just growing, healthy food and learning about nutrition, health hacks that we're adding to that, also in terms of really helping people to understand how inner and outer nature are really the same, and how we can connect them through a harmonious way to heal ourselves again and take responsibility ourselves to heal ourselves. And that's all on the Holistic Living University website, where we've got all the courses and the workshops listed. And then on top of that, we're going to start offering this year also courses on beekeeping, on sacred geometry. We're going to bring in sacred and bioarchitecture next year. So we can really start developing these different faculties in terms of growing the consciousness, but also the practical skill sets to translate the consciousness into action. We need to action now. We need to, get this on the ground.
I'm just looking at the pictures with Jeff. Oh, there you are.
That looks like me last year. And, we're growing, and we're now looking at fundraising to grow this faster, because it's basically been run by myself for 8 years and launched on many platforms in different levels, practically and online. And now we're having a team of people working with me who are starting, as a faculty to add value to what we're doing, and also value to people's lives. Because if we learn about these new mindsets and new relationships with nature around us and within us, the outer and the inner light, I think we're going to make a huge impact and change.
Very good.
So that's your message of hope.
It's not just hope, it's clear intention, and it's my word that I walk the talk. This is happening. It's not going to be hope. It's not, it's intent. It's happening.
So
thy will shall be
action. Thy will shall be done.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And that's a promise.
Jeff, do you want to...
That's not a
Jeff,
hope.
do you have any questions?
No, he's nailed it. Very good. Appreciate it.
He's nailed it. Excellent. Well, Hans, it's always such a great pleasure to talk with you, and you've blown my mind. You've blown my mind with so I think we can forget all about any ideas I previously had 2 hours ago. They're just forget that, because it's flipping amazing that everything is all around us all the time, and it literally is hidden in plain sight, that it's all there.
Tap into it. Just need to tap into it. It's all there, and
Yeah.
then make sense of it, and we will help you with that. But the main thing is become sovereign in that way, that you are the scientist, you're the healer, you're the doctor, you're the soul carer, and you're responsible for that in yourself. You're also the teacher. We all have that inside. We need to reclaim that power. And when we're together in community, we can support each other, hold each other accountable, and help each other to rediscover that power that's within each one of us.
Yeah. We're just living, walking miracles, and we just don't know it.
Absolutely. You hit it
Some
there.
of us
You
do,
hit it on the nail there.
and some of us need to be a little bit more miracle workers. Thank you very, very much. It's a great joy.
It's a joy to do it. It's not hard work.
No.
It's not easy, but it's simple. It's so fulfilling. Yeah. It nourishes me every day. And you asking questions and people coming back with questions, this is going to make it grow. The quest of each one with their authentic questions. There are no silly questions. There's no stupidity. There's only what's coming from us authentically, and allow that to happen, that space, to create that space to explore and discover again together, like children used to do. Like we have the child within. Let's do it.
All right. And I just want to finish up by saying how wonderful the quince tree is in the garden. So Hans was back again to look at my mother's quince tree, and it's been saved. The winds didn't completely rip it up last September totally, and it's been supported, and the props have been taken off, and with a bit of luck, they'll get the new trench to put some more compost in the ground all around where the roots need to grow a little bit stronger. And then from there, who knows, come September time, we'll have a magnificent crop of more quince tree or more quinces to play with. And thank you very, very much for that personal intervention that has saved and salvaged the tree, and it's growing brilliantly. It's got such good buds all over it. So thank you very, very much for that too.
My delight.
Oh, mine too, that's for sure. Thanks a lot. Okay, Jeff, anything else?
No, thank you. You've been listening to Radio FM 88 Australia. Appreciate you tuning in or watching the show afterwards. Thank you very much for coming.